You've heard of the glass ceiling, right? That invisible barrier that seems to stop women from reaching the very top jobs? It's this persistent, frustrating puzzle. But what if we could actually put it to the test, scientifically? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're diving into a fascinating experiment that put two big theories head-to-head in a scientific showdown to see what's really going on. So here's our roadmap. First, we'll get a handle on the glass ceiling puzzle itself. Then, we'll meet the two competing theories that try to explain it. After that, we'll see how a really clever experiment was designed to test them, what the surprising verdict was, and, most importantly, what this all means for you and me in the workplace. Let's start with a number that really makes you stop and think. So, women hold about 42% of all management jobs in the US. But when you look at the very top, the biggest corporations, that number just plummets, less than 5%. That massive drop-off is the mystery we're looking into today. So what gives? What's the actual barrier? Is it a lack of training, experience, or is it something deeper about how we perceive leaders in the first place? That's the core question here. All right, let's get into our first section, the glass ceiling puzzle. When the U.S. Department of Labor actually created a commission to investigate this, they found that the number one obstacle wasn't skills or experience. Nope, it was something way more subtle. And here's what they concluded. The problem really boils down to perception. It's prejudice, this built-in idea that female leaders are just less capable than men, even when they have the exact same qualifications. So it isn't about competence, it's about a biased evaluation. Okay, so that leads us to section 2. To explain this bias, scientists came up with two major theories, and you can think of it as a showdown, stereotypes versus structure. Here are our two contenders. On one side, you have the social role model. It argues that all our societal gender stereotypes just kind of spill over into the office. On the other side, you have the structural model, which says, forget stereotypes, what really matters is the power and authority that comes with someone's actual job title. Let's dig into that social role model a little more. It basically says we have these unwritten rules. We expect men to be assertive, and we expect women to be, more supportive. The problem is, the role of manager is stereotypically masculine. So when a woman steps into that role and acts assertive, she's breaking those unwritten social rules and gets penalized for it. This creates what researchers call a role incompatibility. It's a classic catch-22. If a female manager is warm and supportive, she's seen as a good woman, but a bad leader. If she's assertive and direct, she's seen as a good leader, but a bad woman. It's a total no-win situation. But the structural model comes along and says, hold on, maybe we're looking at this all wrong. It argues that you should ignore the stereotypes and just look at the org chart. In this view, what look like gender differences are actually just power differences in disguise. You give a man and a woman the exact same job, the same authority, and they'll be judged on their actions, not their gender. So you've got two theories with completely opposite predictions. One says an assertive female manager gets punished. The other says she won't. So how do you find out who's right? Well, you design a killer experiment. And the design here was just brilliant. Researchers made 4 different videos of a manager talking to their team. Sometimes the manager was a woman named Kathy, sometimes a man named Dave, and sometimes they used a direct, assertive style, and other times an indirect, weaker style. Everything else, the words, the set, the situation, was exactly the same. So, what did direct influence look like? Think of a classic no-nonsense boss, giving clear orders, making strong assertions like, I will be outlining, and using direct eye contact, just a real take charge kind of leader. And the indirect style? It was the polar opposite. This manager used flattery, made helpless pleas, and used a ton of wishy-washy language like maybe and I suppose, all while avoiding direct eye contact. It was basically designed to project a total lack of power. And that brings us to section 4, the surprising verdict. People watched one of the 4 videos and then rated the manager on things like power and effectiveness. So, after all the data was crunched, which theory won? So, what do you think happened? Did the social role theory nail it? Was direct Kathy punished with low ratings for acting unfeminine? Or did the structural theory win out, with people judging based on the manager's actions, completely ignoring their gender? Well, when the data came in, it wasn't even close. The researchers didn't have to squint to see the answer. The evidence was just, boom, clear, consistent, and totally overwhelming. And here it is, The direct, assertive manager was seen as way, way more effective than the indirect one. No surprise there. But here's the knockout punch. The gender of the manager had no significant effect. Direct Dave and direct Kathy got almost the exact same high scores for effectiveness. The verdict was in. In this showdown, the structural model was the clear winner, hands down. What mattered wasn't the manager's gender, but their behavior, the influence style they used. When you put Kathy in the exact same position of power as Dave and had her act the part, she was seen as every bit as competent and effective. So let's get to the final section. What does this all mean for us? This is more than just a cool lab result. What are the real-world lessons we can take from this scientific showdown? Well, the implications are actually huge. This suggests that a person's organizational role, when it's clear, can literally override our deep-seated gender stereotypes. What you do in your job can matter more than who you are. So the big takeaway for companies is this: make roles and authority crystal clear. When you empower female managers and there's no ambiguity about their power, this bias can just fade away. Now, the one catch is that bias might still creep in during fuzzy situations where someone's role isn't well defined. Now, of course, no study is perfect, and we should be upfront about the limitations here. The people in the study were college students, not seasoned managers. The job they looked at was a customer service manager, which some might see as a more stereotypically feminine role. And, watching a short video is not the same as working in a messy, complex, real-world office. That's all important context. But even with those limitations, this study leaves us with a really powerful final thought. If something as simple as organizational structure, just making a role clear, giving someone real authority, can neutralize a bias as strong as gender stereotyping, well, what other workplace rules should we be questioning? It makes you wonder how many of the things we assume about people at work aren't really about them at all, but are dictated by these hidden structures that we almost never stop to think about.